10-year-old Lily was just playing soccer in her backyard when the neighborhood bully snapped. Armed with a leather belt, he stormed across the street ready to teach her a lesson. But he had no idea her father was a retired SWAT officer with very loyal friends. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. In the backyard of 23 Oak Street, 10-year-old Lily Carter laughed as she kicked a soccer ball against the fence. Her brown curls bounced and her giggles mixed with the chirping birds. She wore a bright yellow t-shirt and sneakers, her favorite outfit for playing outside. The ball hit the fence with a soft thud over and over. It was a harmless game, one she played almost every day. Lily loved soccer more than anything. Her room was filled with posters of famous soccer players. She had dreams of playing on the school team when she got older. Every day after school she would rush to the backyard to practice. Her parents, Tom and Sarah, always encouraged her. They loved hearing her laugh and seeing her happy. The fence was old but sturdy. It separated their yard from the empty lot next door. Lily had been playing this same game for months. She would kick the ball, catch it when it bounced back and kick it again. Sometimes she pretended she was scoring the winning goal in a big game. Other times she just enjoyed the steady rhythm of kick, bounce, catch. But not everyone thought it was harmless. Across the yard, standing on his porch, was Mr. Harold Grayson, the president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. Harold was a tall, wiry man in his 50s, with thinning gray hair and a permanent scowl. He wore a pressed polo shirt and khakis, his arms crossed tightly. To him, the neighborhood was his kingdom and he ruled it with an iron fist. Every blade of grass had to be perfect. Every mailbox had to match. And every sound had to be approved by him. Harold had moved to Maple Grove 5 years ago after his divorce. He had no children and didn't understand them. He saw kids as noisy problems that needed to be controlled. When he became HOA president 2 years ago, he made life difficult for every family with children. He banned sidewalk chalk, complained about birthday parties and even tried to limit the hours when kids could play outside. Most neighbors were afraid of Harold. He had the power to fine them for small violations. He could make their lives miserable with constant complaints and letters. So they stayed quiet and tried to avoid him. But Harold's anger had been growing. He felt like no one respected his authority anymore. Harold had been watching Lily for weeks. Her soccer ball hitting the fence annoyed him. He'd sent letters to her family warning them to stop. It's a violation of HOA rules, he'd written, citing some vague clause about excessive noise. The Carters ignored him. They weren't breaking any real rules and Lily's game wasn't loud. But to Harold, ignoring him was the ultimate crime. The first letter came in May. Tom Carter read it and shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he told Sarah. The letter claimed that Lily's ball hitting the fence was disturbing the peace and damaging community property. Tom knew the fence belonged to them, not the HOA. He threw the letter in the trash. The second letter arrived a week later. This one threatened a fine of $50. Tom called the HOA office and spoke to Harold directly. "My daughter is playing in our own backyard," Tom said calmly. "She's not breaking any rules." Harold's voice was cold. "I decide what breaks the rules, Mr. Carter. Control your child or face the consequences." Tom hung up, angry but trying to stay calm. He didn't want to escalate things. He just wanted his daughter to be able to play safely at home. Today Harold had had enough. His face twisted with anger as he stormed across the street, his leather belt already unbuckled and dangling in his hand. "You little brat," he shouted, his voice sharp enough to make Lily freeze. She turned, eyes wide, clutching the soccer ball. "Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice small. She took a step back, but he was already in the yard, his long strides closing the distance. Lily had seen Harold before but had never talked to him. Her parents had warned her to stay away from him. "He's not a nice man," her mother had said. Now, seeing his angry face and the belt in his hand, Lily felt scared. She didn't understand what she had done wrong. "You think you can ignore me?" he yelled. "I told you to stop that racket." Before Lily could run, he grabbed her arm, yanking her toward him. The belt came down hard, cracking against her shoulder. She screamed, a high-pitched sound that cut through the quiet street. The belt struck again, this time on her back, and she crumpled to the grass, sobbing. The pain was unlike anything Lily had ever felt. The leather belt stung her skin and left red marks. She couldn't understand why this man was hurting her. She had only been playing. She tried to protect herself with her small hands, but Harold was too strong. "Stop it," she cried, curling into a ball. Her small body shook as the belt hit her again. Bruises bloomed on her arms and her screams grew louder, echoing through the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through curtains, too shocked or scared to move. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived next door, saw everything from her kitchen window. She grabbed her phone to call the police but hesitated. Harold was powerful in the neighborhood. What if he came after her family next? Across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson watched in horror but felt frozen. They had teenage daughters and couldn't risk Harold's anger. Inside the Carter house, Tom Carter heard his daughter's cries. Tom was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a calm face that hid a storm of strength. He'd been a SWAT officer for 15 years before retiring to raise Lily with his wife, Sarah. Now he worked as a security consultant, but the instincts of his old life never left him. The sound of Lily's screams hit him like a gunshot. Tom had been in his home office, working on a security report for a local business. He knew Lily was playing outside, and the sound of the ball against the fence had become background noise. He actually found it comforting, a sign that his daughter was happy and safe. When her screams pierced the air, every instinct he had developed as a police officer kicked in. He bolted out the back door, his boots pounding the deck. When he saw Harold standing over his daughter, belt raised, something inside him snapped. His heart thundered, rage flooding his veins. But Tom wasn't a man who acted on impulse. He was trained, disciplined. He knelt beside Lily, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries. Tom's training took over. First, secure the victim. Check for injuries. Assess the threat. Harold stood a few feet away, still holding the belt, breathing hard from his attack. Tom's hands moved carefully over Lily's arms and back, checking for serious damage. The bruises were already forming, but nothing seemed broken. "Lily, sweetheart, I'm here," he said softly, his voice steady despite the fire in his chest. She clung to him, her face streaked with tears. "It hurts, Daddy," she whimpered. "I know, baby. You're safe now." He lifted her carefully, carrying her inside to Sarah, who was already running toward them, her face pale with horror. Sarah had been folding laundry upstairs when she heard the screaming. At first she thought maybe Lily had fallen and hurt herself. But the screams continued and she heard an adult voice yelling. She dropped everything and ran downstairs, reaching the back door just as Tom was carrying Lily inside. "Tom, what happened?" Sarah gasped, taking Lily into her arms. "Grayson," Tom said, his voice low and dangerous. He didn't need to say more. Sarah's eyes widened, but she nodded, focusing on comforting Lily. Sarah had heard about Harold's letters. She had wanted to confront him herself, but Tom had convinced her to ignore him. "He's just a bully," Tom had said. "If we don't give him attention, he'll move on." Now Sarah realized how wrong they had been. Harold wasn't just a bully with words. He was dangerous. Tom stepped back outside, his jaw tight. Harold was still in the yard, belt in hand, smirking like he'd won something. "You need to control your kid," Harold said, pointing at Tom. "This is my neighborhood. I make the rules." Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes, cold and unblinking, locked onto Harold's. The HOA president took a step back, suddenly unsure. Tom pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It rang once before a gruff voice answered. The number belonged to Mike Hendricks, Tom's old partner from the SWAT team. Mike was now a sergeant with the tactical unit. Tom had saved Mike's life during a hostage situation 3 years ago. They had stayed friends after Tom retired, but Tom had never asked for help. Until now. "Mike, it's Tom," he said, his voice steady but hard. "I need you. Now, Oak Street. Bring the team." On the other end, Mike didn't ask questions. He knew Tom's tone. In their years together, Tom had never been wrong about danger. If Tom was calling in favors, someone was in serious trouble. 3 minutes, Mike said, and the line went dead. Harold scoffed, trying to hide his unease. "What, you calling your buddies? This is HOA business. You can't touch me." Tom ignored him, standing like a statue in the yard. His silence was louder than any threat. Harold shifted, his confidence cracking. He wasn't used to people standing up to him. Most neighbors caved under his bullying, paying fines or fixing whatever he complained about. But Tom wasn't most neighbors. Harold tried to regain control. "I have every right to enforce HOA rules," he said loudly. "That little brat was making noise and disturbing the peace. I warned you multiple times." Tom still said nothing. He just stared at Harold with the cold, patient look he had used on dangerous criminals. Harold began to sweat. The belt felt heavy in his hand and he realized how bad this looked. A grown man with a weapon, standing over a child's toys scattered on the ground. "Look, maybe I got a little carried away," Harold said, his voice less confident. "But you need to understand, I have a responsibility to this neighborhood. Minutes later, the street rumbled. 3 black armored vans screeched to a stop in front of the Carter house. Doors flew open and 8 men in tactical gear poured out, rifles in hand. They moved with precision, fanning out to secure the area. Neighbors gaped from their windows, some stepping onto porches, whispering to each other. The quiet afternoon was gone, replaced by the heavy tread of boots and the clink of gear. The SWAT team moved like they were responding to a terrorist threat. They had worked with Tom for years and trusted his judgment completely. If Tom said he needed them, they came with full force. The sight of armed tactical officers in the peaceful suburb was shocking, but Mike had learned to trust Tom's instincts. Mike, the team leader, approached Tom. He was a stocky man with a buzz cut and a scar across his cheek. "What's the situation?" he asked, his eyes scanning Harold. Tom pointed at the HOA president, who was now pale, the belt still dangling from his hand. "He beat my daughter." With that. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made Mike's jaw tighten. Mike had met Lily before at Tom's retirement party. She was a sweet kid who had made him a card thanking him for keeping her daddy safe. The thought of someone hurting her made Mike's blood boil. He looked at Harold with the same disgust he reserved for the worst criminals. Mike turned to Harold, his gaze like steel. "You. Drop the belt. Now." Harold's bravado melted. The belt fell to the grass with a soft thud. This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, raising his hands. "I'm the HOA president. I was just enforcing rules." "Rules?" Mike said, stepping closer. "You think rules let you hit a kid?" He nodded to one of his men who moved forward, cuffs in hand. Harold backed away, his eyes darting between the armed men. "You can't arrest me. This is private property." "You assaulted a child," Tom said, his voice cutting through the air. "You're done." The officer with the cuffs grabbed Harold's arm, twisting it behind his back. Harold yelped, but he didn't fight. He knew he was outnumbered. The team moved efficiently, one of them radioing for local police to take over. They weren't here to make an arrest, that wasn't their jurisdiction, but they could hold Harold until the cops arrived. Harold tried one last time to talk his way out. "This is all a big mistake," he said as the cuffs clicked shut. "I'm an important person in this community. I know people. I can sue you all for this." Mike leaned close to Harold's ear. "You hurt a 10-year-old girl with a belt," he said quietly. "Important people don't do that. Only cowards do." Neighbors were now gathered on the sidewalk, murmuring. Mrs. Jenkins, an older woman with a cane, shook her head. "I always knew Harold was a bully," she said loudly. About time someone stopped him. Mrs. Jenkins had lived in Maple Grove for 20 years. She had watched Harold terrorize the neighborhood since he became HOA president. Her own grandson visited every summer, but she was afraid to let him play outside because of Harold's complaints. Another neighbor, a young dad named Chris, stepped forward. "I saw it happen," he told Mike. "He just went after her. Lily wasn't doing anything wrong." Chris lived 2 houses down and had been washing his car when he heard the screaming. He had wanted to help but was afraid of Harold's retaliation. His wife was pregnant with their first child, and he couldn't risk Harold making their lives miserable. Mike nodded, taking notes. "We'll need statements. Anyone else see it?" Hands went up. Half a dozen neighbors confirmed they'd seen Harold storm into the yard and start swinging. Their voices grew bolder, fueled by the sight of Harold cuffed and helpless. For years he'd terrorized the neighborhood with his petty rules and threats. Now the tables had turned. Mrs. Patterson spoke up. "He fined us $200 because our Christmas lights were the wrong color. Said they weren't community appropriate." Mr. Davis added, "He tried to make us cut down our oak tree because it dropped leaves in the street." The stories poured out. Years of bullying, petty complaints, and power trips. Harold had made everyone's life difficult, but no one had dared to fight back. Until now. Inside the house, Sarah sat with Lily on the couch, holding an ice pack to her bruises. Lily's sobs had quieted, but her eyes were still red. "Why did he hit me, Mom?" she asked. Sarah's heart broke, but she kept her voice soft. "Some people are mean, sweetheart. But your dad's taking care of it. You're safe now." Sarah carefully cleaned the cuts on Lily's arms and back. The belt had left angry red marks, but thankfully nothing too deep. Still, Sarah took pictures with her phone. If this went to court, they would need evidence of Harold's attack. Lily clung to her mother, still shaking from fear and shock. "I was just playing," she whispered. "I wasn't being bad." "You weren't being bad at all, honey," Sarah said, stroking her hair. "You were just playing like you always do. That man was wrong to hurt you." Outside, the police arrived, their lights flashing. Two officers stepped out and Mike briefed them. Harold was handed over, still muttering about his rights and the HOA. The cops weren't impressed. "You'll have plenty of time to explain at the station," one said, shoving him into the back of a cruiser. Officer Martinez, who had been with the local police for 8 years, shook his head as he looked at the evidence. "Child abuse case," he told his partner. "Pretty clear-cut. Multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and the guy was still holding the weapon when backup arrived." The second officer, Detective Williams, interviewed several neighbors on the spot. The story was consistent. Harold had attacked an innocent child who was playing in her own yard. There was no justification for his actions. Tom watched it all from the edge of the yard, his arms crossed. Mike walked over, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "You good, brother?" Tom nodded, but his eyes were on the cruiser as it pulled away. "Yeah. Thanks for coming." "Anytime," Mike said. "You call, we're here." "How's Lily?" "She'll be okay," Tom said. "Sarah's with her now." Mike squeezed Tom's shoulder. "That guy picked the wrong family to mess with. He has no idea what he just walked into." The team packed up, their vans rolling out as quickly as they'd come. The street felt quiet again, but it felt different now. The neighbors lingered, talking in low voices. Some approached Tom, offering support. "We're with you," Mrs. Jenkins said, patting his arm. "That man's been a tyrant too long." Tom gave a small nod, his mind still on Lily. He went back inside, where Sarah was bandaging a cut on Lily's arm. He knelt beside her, brushing her hair back. "You okay, kiddo?" Lily nodded, her lip trembling. "Will he come back?" "No," Tom said firmly. "He's not going to hurt you again. I promise." Sarah looked at Tom, her eyes full of questions. "What happens now?" she asked. "He'll face charges," Tom said. "Assault on a minor. Witnesses saw everything. He's not getting out of this." The next few days were a whirlwind. The police took statements, and the story spread through Maple Grove like wildfire. Local news picked up the story: HOA president arrested for attacking child. Harold's mugshot appeared on television, and the community was outraged. Neighbors who'd once feared Harold now spoke openly about his bullying. Some shared their own stories: fines for minor infractions, threats over unapproved paint colors. The local newspaper ran a series of articles about HOA abuse of power, using Harold as the prime example. The HOA board, embarrassed by the scandal, voted to remove Harold as president. A new leader, a kind woman named Ellen Martinez, took over, promising to rewrite the rules and focus on community, not control. Ellen was a teacher and mother of 3 who believed neighborhoods should be places where families could thrive. Lily healed slowly. Her bruises faded, but she was quieter, sticking close to her parents. Tom and Sarah took her to a counselor, who helped her talk about what happened. She started smiling again little by little. One afternoon she even kicked her soccer ball in the yard, though she glanced at the fence nervously. The counselor, Dr. Emily Watson, specialized in helping children who had experienced trauma. She used play therapy to help Lily process what had happened. "It's normal for her to be scared," Dr. Watson told Tom and Sarah. "But children are resilient. With love and support she'll recover." Tom watched from the porch, his heart heavy but hopeful. He'd always known his old life. His SWAT days gave him skills most people didn't have. But he'd never wanted to use them here in this quiet suburb. Now he realized those skills had protected his daughter. Not just his training, but the brothers he'd served with, who'd dropped everything to help. The neighborhood changed after that day. People were friendlier, less afraid to speak up. The HOA meetings, once tense and formal, became more like community gatherings. Ellen organized barbecues and kids' events, and the Carters were always invited. Lily's laughter returned, louder each day. The new HOA rules were simple and fair. No more arbitrary fines or power trips. Ellen focused on real community issues like street repairs and neighborhood safety. She created a playground committee and organized movie nights in the park. Maple Grove became the kind of place people actually wanted to live. As for Harold, he faced trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses, photos of Lily's bruises, even a partial video from a neighbor's security camera. He was convicted of assault and sentenced to 2 years in prison. His lawyer tried to argue that he was just enforcing HOA rules, but the judge wasn't having it. "Mr. Grayson," Judge Patricia Reynolds said at sentencing, "you attacked a defenseless child. No rule, no authority, no position justifies what you did. You're a grown man who chose to hurt a little girl. That's not leadership, that's cowardice." The neighborhood didn't miss him. Property values actually went up after Harold left. Families with children began moving to Maple Grove, attracted by the new community spirit and family-friendly atmosphere. One evening as the sun set over Maple Grove, Tom sat on the porch with Sarah, watching Lily play with a friend. The soccer ball thumped against the fence, and for the first time in weeks Tom didn't tense. Sarah leaned against him, her hand in his. "We're okay," she said softly. "Yeah," Tom replied, squeezing her hand. "We're okay." Lily ran over to them, her face bright with joy. "Dad, did you see my goal? I kicked it just like you taught me." Tom smiled, pulling his daughter close. "I saw it, kiddo. Perfect form." And in the quiet of that suburban evening, with the street calm and the stars just starting to show, justice felt real. Not just for Lily but for everyone who'd lived under Harold's shadow. Maple Grove was theirs again. The sound of children playing filled the air as other kids joined Lily in the yard. Parents came out to watch, no longer worried about complaints or fines. The neighborhood felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. Tom looked around at his neighbors, at his family, at the peaceful street where his daughter could play safely. Sometimes he thought justice came from the courts and the law. But sometimes, it came from people who cared enough to stand up and fight for what was right. In Maple Grove, justice had finally come home.